This is the Dallas Morning News.
Eat, Drink, DFW from the Dallas Morning News is made possible by Central Market.
Hello, and welcome to Eat, Drink, DFW, the podcast from the Dallas Morning News food team. Each week, we take a look at food and drink trends in North Texas, talk about restaurants in Dallas-Fort Worth, learn some new recipes, and sometimes even get tips from you, our listeners. I'm Anna Butler, the food editor at the Dallas Morning News. We have a special guest joining us in studio today. We'll be hearing from Texas Monthly BBQ editor Daniel Vaughn, and later, we're getting into your feedback on the Michelin Awards. That's all coming up right after this.
Central Market is really into food, like fish flown in so fresh it still has jet lag into food. Our sourdough starter has been around since grunge was a thing into food. We're talking more prime cuts than a greatest hits album into food. Central Market is really into food. If you are too, then we're the HQ for you. Whether you're a make every recipe in the cookbook foodie or a my favorite recipe is reheat type who just digs the delectable, no place makes every day more delicious like Central Market. Really into food. Shop now at centralmarket.com.
For the latest food and restaurant news in Dallas-Fort Worth, visit dallasnews.com/food. Also, we'd love to hear from you, so email us at eatdrink@dallasnews.com. Today, I'm joined by Sarah Blaskovich and Imelda Garcia. Claire is away, but we have Daniel Vaughn in the studio with us today.
Woo! Good to be here.
Daniel, you are the barbecue editor for Texas Monthly. You've been that since 2013, and you lead the publication's top 50 list of barbecue joints, alongside a team of folks too, but that's kind of your baby. You are now starring in a new special on PBS called The State of BBQ, and you're taking viewers behind the curtain of how Texas Monthly comes up with its list and just what's going on in the world of barbecue today. I'm going to have to say, your introduction was epic. When you said, I've eaten at 2,500 barbecue joints in Texas and eat at about, 50 a month to keep up with the pace, that's crazy.
That's the most that I've eaten in a month is 50, which I did in both January and February of this year. That is not my usual pace, but I guess that's what I can withstand.
Would you describe it as character building?
Yeah, I guess so. It's still a really good job, but sometimes it does feel like work.
I will say you are like the barbecuologist of Texas.
Yeah.
I like it. I'll take it.
I think that's right.
It's a great title.
Okay, so the documentary is called The State of BBQ, but it's really about Texas barbecue, of course, and given your job, that makes sense. But if you look at barbecue nationwide, what role does Texas play in any discussion about barbecue?
Well, I mean, Texas is, I think, easily the most influential style of barbecue across the country. I think you certainly have the big names out there, the Carolinas, both North and South Carolina. You got Memphis and Kansas City. But if you look at the new barbecue joints that are opening, they are primarily doing Texas-style barbecue. And by Texas-style barbecue, I mean they're all smoking briskets, and most of them are doing it on offset smokers, the big 1,000-gallon cookers. There's not a whole lot of places out there that are like replicating North Carolina-style whole hog in Portland, Oregon, right? But seeing that brisket is pretty much everywhere across the country, which I think pitmasters these days, especially in Texas, are like, there's only 2 per animal, all right? And with Texas barbecue getting so popular across the country, it's making brisket just so much more expensive.
And it's also, barbecue is not budget food anymore. And I could speak from personal experience that if I take my family of 4 out to eat barbecue, it can be more expensive than some other places where we go to eat in Dallas. And I'm sure you're finding the same thing all over the state and the country, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, my expense reports certainly are getting higher and higher. But yeah, the cost per pound of brisket is usually the sort of measuring point for the cost of barbecue overall. I did just recently write about Tyler's Barbecue in Amarillo, which was doing a $16 a pound beef rib, like the beef short rib.
Wow.
Which, if you consider that like the sort of average price in Texas these days for brisket is about $36, $35 a pound, seeing the $16 a pound beef rib, which is usually even at more of a premium than brisket. And he does it just because he likes people to enjoy it. And he knows he's not going to make any money off of it. But because it's $16 a pound, that was like enough for a story, right? That
Totally.
Enough. And I went back and I looked at, it was about 10 years ago that Louis Miller Barbecue, who's really famous for their beef rib in Taylor, Texas, that their beef rib was down that low. That was 11 years ago that theirs was $16 a pound. Even that is kind of crazy to think about, because in the last 11 years, the cost of beef ribs and certainly the cost of brisket has pretty much doubled across Texas and certainly in Texas-style barbecue joints across the country.
Now, when you look at your top 50 barbecue joints list, which comes out every 4 years, this is one of the things you're best known for, although it's worth noting that in the 3 years and 3/4 in between all of those. There's so many other stories that you write about people and about food all over the state. What do you want our listeners to know about the top 50 list? Maybe some misconceptions or some important things about this list that some don't know.
One of the first facts that you mentioned is often a misconception. It is every 4 years. I saw a lot of people at the barbecue festival down in Lockhart who were like, can't wait for next year's list. And it's like, every 4 years. We can't do it every year.
This is the Olympics.
Exactly.
It'd be so unsustainable.
Totally.
Yes. Yeah. Bud Kennedy did mention that every presidential inaugural year is now when the top 50 lists
You just hitch your wagon right to that.
Yeah, exactly. I think one of the other misconceptions is that it's all like up to me.
Yeah.
That I'm the only one who goes out and does this. And, we have tasters, across the board at Texas Monthly who are part of that team as well. And I'm having discussions with them up until the very last day of when I have to actually turn in that list. So there's a lot more that goes into it. Unfortunately, this year, I didn't have Pat Sharp, our food editor for over 50 years, and had been just really an integral part to the barbecue list. She was part of that early tasting, and she was there for our final visit, which ended up being at Burnt Bean Co. Our number one, and then at Reese Bros in San Antonio, which was also in our top 50. So she was along for those visits, but she's retired now, and so I didn't have that person with all that institutional knowledge to bounce things off of.
Do you find that people are easily upset by the list or riled by what comes out? Or is it more enthusiasm? Is there a good way to generalize the feeling of the list?
I mean, it's generally just positive, right? It's just,
good.
It's a good thing for barbecue. Even barbecue joints not on the list experience a jump in business because it feels like barbecue season when it comes out. In 2021, our list came out in our November issue, which felt a little off, and we had to do that because of COVID, and so we had to get started a little later in doing our tastings. This time we got back to our normal schedule, which it comes out in May in our June issue, and so it really did feel like barbecue season. I mean, of course, there's naysayers. There's people who are unhappy for not making the list. Unfortunately, now that we have a ranked top 10, the people who don't make the top 10 or aren't where they think they should be in the top 10 are oftentimes more upset than people who are, say, in the honorable mentions list.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So there's some folks who they don't understand that like being one of the 50 best barbecue joints in Texas these days is a pretty great achievement.
Absolutely.
Because we also have 50 honorable mentions that come after our top 50, which we also think of as really incredible barbecue joints. So yeah, being one of the 50 best is pretty stellar.
Have you noticed a jump in the number of barbecue restaurants since you started doing this 12 odd years ago?
Yes. Yeah. Certainly a jump in the number of barbecue joints and a jump in those who were open, 2 or 3 days a week and open for a few hours a day. That style of barbecue or that style of service, I guess, is a lot more popular than, say, a Hutchins barbecue or a Terry Black's here that's open 7 days a week and serving lunch and dinner. So yeah, certainly more businesses, but often those businesses are, a little harder to visit just because of their limited hours and limited days.
In the PBS documentary, which I really enjoyed, it was 53 minutes if you watch it online, so just a great drive-by of what's happening in Texas barbecue. In it, you say you used to write almost solely about food, about barbecue, and now you tell stories about the people, and then the food stories naturally follow. And you said in the documentary, the story about people is just more interesting. So an example you gave was the Austin pitmaster at KG making Egyptian barbecue in Texas. Now, can you tell us about a pitmaster or two in North Texas whose story is just as interesting as the food?
Well, let's just go with recency. Yesterday I went to Sabre Barbecue.
Oh, you did?
Fort Worth.
Great.
Yeah. It's a food truck run by Zane Shafi, and it is Pakistani barbecue.
Yeah.
And it is, right now, it's just Saturday and Sunday only. And it's a thoroughly unique look at barbecue, especially the barbecue sides and things like, he's got a pretty short menu, but you see tandoori smoked turkey on the menu and it's like, okay, wow, that sounds interesting. And it comes through, like those spices come through. He sells the rub there as well. And, the menu itself is halal. And so there is no pork. And because of that, it does lamb ribs. and the smoked lamb ribs are just spectacular. Of course, his brisket is great. It's pretty smoky. I was lucky enough to get some of the Wagyu brisket because his supplier sent him like a box of Wagyu briskets too. And so, yeah.
He's like, okay, I'll use them.
Yeah, exactly. But his sides are so good. Like there's this cucumber salad, and then there's this fruit chaat, which is a fruit salad mixed with some Pakistani spices, some sumac and herbs, and then some dal, instead of your standard pinto beans. And so it's got all those like familiar flavors and familiar categories, I should say, that are filled. But the flavors are so unique, and it makes it a lot of fun. And, I think these days, a lot of new barbecue joints are looking for ways in which to really differentiate themselves from, your sort of standard barbecue menu, because it is so competitive.
Yeah, Sub Bar Barbecue is interesting to me. First of all, because I think the food is delicious, but also I put it on my list of restaurants I hoped Michelin was looking at, maybe even for a recommended or a bib gourmand. But Zane is doing something that many other people are not. And in a world where the differences between your number 2 barbecue place and your number 3 barbecue place seem so small, right? They're so competitive. It's like you throw in something like this Fort Worth food truck, and though the same genre, he's doing some really cool different things there that make me excited about barbecue in this like renewed way. That's a great example.
Well, and I will point out as well that as I was standing in line for his barbecue, I think he's got like $38 a pound brisket. But I also saw that there was a little fair going on in that parking lot, and there was a toffee salesman right next to him, and the toffee was $32 for a half pound. So his $38 a pound brisket looked like a deal.
One thing I was thinking about is now we have so much more fusion barbecue. So I think about a Pakistani barbecue, Egyptian, Ethiopian, and all of these other types of cuisine. How are you informing yourself? Is it just I'm showing up and I'm eating barbecue and I'm trying it through this lens, or are you finding yourself becoming a student of other kinds of cuisines after this?
Yeah, well, Sarah mentioned that I don't really just focus just on the food anymore. I really want to talk to the people. And that's a good reason why, being able to talk to. I'm writing right now about a Charm Tap House and Barbecue down in Conroe, and it's a Thai barbecue place. And the family that runs it has opened 2 Thai restaurants before, and now they've decided to incorporate barbecue in their 3rd one. And so I get them as a resource to talk to them about how they develop these recipes and how they sort of discovered what went well with barbecue. And so, I get to learn about it a lot through them. And I got to learn a lot about, what halal meant through talking to, people like Zane and talking to CJ at Yerby's Barbecue, who will be opening up in Plano soon. I was judging Meat Fight with him last night, and I think he said he's hoping by the end of November they'll be open. So
they've got their sign up now. I had a mole in Plano who was just watching to see when Yerby's was going to be opening. And not because I was going to write about it. It's just we had interest in going. And the sign's up now, but they're not open yet. Is that right?
Not quite. Yeah. Soon.
You said Smoke and Ash in Arlington sort of reshaped my idea of what barbecue can be. Why was that?
Well, because of the way that they really incorporated the flavors of Ethiopian food into the barbecue, not just serving different sides, taking that, the clarified butter and blooming their spices in it, and then coating the slices of brisket and the ribs in that seasoning. It was like, it was a completely different way of seasoning the barbecue. It's still smoked meat, but instead of a standard barbecue sauce or even a sweet glaze, it was like a completely different thing that, it brought out those spices that they bring back from Ethiopia. And it was a unique flavor and a unique preparation.
Something about Smoke and Ash that I was sort of excited by when I went for the first time was that the cashier did a good job of explaining what things were. Here's the deal about other people's cultures. I don't think it's their job to necessarily educate me, a food writer, about all of their culinary traditions. That said, it is helpful when they're helpful if you have questions. And so it was neat. Like we walked in and I knew what I wanted because I'd been wanting to go there for a while. And one of my kids had a question, well, what is the bread that you give it with us? What does that look like? And so the person working the counter astutely explained what injera is. And my kids hadn't had it before, but now they understand it. I love that. I loved that about Sub Bar Barbecue too, and so many other restaurants, that as you're trying to understand what these spices are or how you've prepared something, that there are these little primers for those of us who are trying to keep up.
Well, and at Smoke and Ash specifically, they did a really good job and when they redid the menu to include that Tex Ethiopian platter so that you didn't have to think about what do I need to order, how do I need to, order to best represent what they can serve. They've got it right here. This is your shortcut. Just order this platter and you'll get that good introduction.
Yeah, good point.
Daniel, barbecue is a very traditional thing in Texas, but would you say there's innovation element in the new barbecue joints?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Texans are open to innovation as well. There's only so like traditional you can get with barbecue, right? And oftentimes the argument is like, well, what is traditional? Like where along that timeline do you stop? Like is brisket traditional? It really didn't become a common menu item until really the 1960s. So does that make it like non-traditional? I don't think anybody who's arguing for traditional barbecue would say that brisket isn't part of that, but that just gives you an idea of like how that cuisine is always shifting. And so, yeah, there is a lot of innovation going on. And I do think a lot of it is market driven, right? That there needs to be a way to differentiate yourself. But I also think that a lot of these immigrants coming in who are bringing in their own cuisines realize that they can maybe make it seem a little less threatening if it's paired with barbecue, or just make it not seem strange at all because it's barbecue after all. Like you go to KG Barbecue in Austin, which you mentioned, and it's quite a bit different. Like the barbecue sauce is not a barbecue sauce at all. It's made with tahini. It's made with sesame paste. It's served in a bowl. Like Habibi Barbecue is another one in Arlington, which is run by a 19-year-old, weekend only, just on Saturdays. And
Wait, I don't know this one yet. Tell us everything.
Well, so it's a Lebanese family. And so Mark Fadel, he was featured on the show called Barbecue High, which followed all these high school barbecue competition teams. And he's like, you know what? When this thing comes out, like I'm going to be ready when this show comes out. And
Love that for him.
Yeah. And he had this weekend only barbecue trailer. His family helped him purchase the trailer. And he serves at the Ghost Food Park, I think it's called, in Arlington. And he serves a limited menu on Friday evenings, but is open all day on Saturday. And I visited a year ago when he first opened, and it was good. It was fine for an 18-year-old pitmaster, right? Who's doing this once a week. And, he wanted me to really bluntly tell him how everything was. And I said, let me put it this way, like a year from now, if you're still doing this and you're cooking every week, you're going to look back on what you served today and you're going to be embarrassed. And he's just like, oh no. I was like, no, this is a good thing. Like, and I'm going to see you in a year and we'll have this discussion again. And I went back a year later and he's like, you were so right.
Oh, wow.
I was looking back at those photos, and in that year, he really embraced his Lebanese heritage a lot more in the menu. And so there is a Lebanese barbecue bowl that uses Lebanese rice and hummus and the tabbouleh and everything with the chopped brisket. And,
that sounds great.
And a toum, this garlic sauce. And he's getting a lot better pita bread now. And actually making the tabbouleh, which he says, or his mom said, there is more prep that goes into the tabbouleh salad, all the chopping of all the individual ingredients, all that parsley. There's more prep time that goes into that one dish than all the rest of the sides combined.
Oh, wow.
I feel like you hear write what you know a lot as a journalist a lot of the time. And I feel like cook what you know is maybe an adage that could be added, because I think there's something so beautiful when someone is cooking the food that they grew up eating.
Yeah. And when you have that tabbouleh, it goes so well with smoked meats because it's bright and it's fresh and it's different. It's a completely different flavor profile than like a heavy, fatty smoked meat that's highly seasoned. And I think that's the same thing with like the fruit shot at Sabar Barbecue.
Yeah, that's right.
It seems like it's not going to go well with barbecue, but then you get this, it's acidic fruit salad and it works.
Yeah.
It works.
Okay, I want to talk about Michelin. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had another Michelin ceremony in Texas, and all of the 4 one-star barbecue places retained their star. That was a surprise to me. I thought that was a large number the first year. And
boring.
Yeah, they just kept it the second year and then, didn't add any of the places that I would imagine you think are special. And I want to talk specifically about Burnt Bean in Seguin, Texas. This was your number 1 barbecue joint in Texas on your list that came out in 2025. And after the list came out, I went to Burnt Bean for the first time. I actually tried a couple years ago and we showed up too late to the sold out sign on the door, which is a heartbreaker, especially for the children, because we'd driven like a long, long time to get there, only to learn that we couldn't eat barbecue that day. So when when we got back, Burnt Bean was my top barbecue joint I've ever been to. It was if I can say, like kind of this life-changing barbecue moment in the way that I hoped it would be, and I hoped you were right. Now, Burnt Bean does not have a Michelin star, but 4 others do. What do you make of that?
Oh, wow. Well, first off, I want to go back to your experience there, because that's so great to hear you say that, because yeah, and Ernest and David, the owners there, would love to hear that as well.
It's really good.
Because they have that yoke of like the highest expectations that you could imagine, right? People going into it. And so actually being able to go in and, I know all the barbecue you've eaten, to still be that impressed with it is great. Obviously, the Michelin tasters did not have your same experience.
Yes.
They didn't seem to be quite as impressed with it.
But we know they went because it is on a list.
It is on a list, yeah.
I know that they went at least 2 years ago.
Right.
That's probably not fair for me to say, because in theory, they hopefully ate at all of the places that they put on the lists again this year.
Yeah, but we don't know that.
We don't know. They're, if maybe they could put a State of Michelin special together and explain their background of how they actually put this list together like we did at Texas Monthly. Because I think it would answer a lot of those questions. Also the questions of, are they too far outside of San Antonio?
Right. I wondered that too.
I wrote an article about how their invitation, along with Barb's BBQ and Lockhart, was initially rescinded by Michelin. And then after I started asking some questions about it to the Michelin folks, they were quickly reinstated and said, no, please, you're still invited. Come, you're going to get whatever recognition you're going to get, you're still going to get. And so they both went, and they both got their Bib Gourmands last year. And then, of course, as you mentioned, retained them again this year. And Parish Barbecue in Austin, I think, was the only one to get a new Bib Gourmand. There were a few more who got recognition. But yeah, I was really glad that I didn't drive down to Houston for that, just to see pretty much no news. But yeah, I thought that Burnt Bean should have been on it last year.
Yep.
I certainly think they could have made up for that mistake this year. But I don't know, maybe they feel pressure to not show that they're being pressured by something like our barbecue list. But yeah, I certainly think Burnt Bean belongs there. I will mention, though, back in 2021, we had some internal dialogue at Texas Monthly about putting Burnt Bean in our top 10. They were number 4 back in 2021. And when the list was released, that meant they were only open for like 10 months. And we had a sort of, it wasn't official, but like we should really wait till barbecue joints are open a year before they make it in the top 10. And we're like, Burnt Bean's just too good. So yeah, I guess we can let that happen. So to see that Michelin this year was like, you know what? I think 48 dinner services is enough to show. You attach the name Joel Robuchon to a restaurant, and all of a sudden the Frenchie's ears light up.
Texas Monthly made an exception for Burnt Bean, it sounds like, in 2021.
Yes.
And you can argue that exception was worth making.
Yes.
And Michelin has said in a statement to us that the Mominy exception was worth making. So it seems easier to argue the 2 months versus a 10 months, in my opinion, but still sort of potentially problematic choices there.
Yeah, I can't imagine they would have made that choice for anything but another French restaurant.
I would like to know if Joel Robuchon being attached to a barbecue restaurant.
Maybe Ernest and David need to go stage the Joel Robuchon. I don't know, bring back some duck à l'orange or something.
I would eat
smoked duck à l'orange.
Yeah, I sure would. That sounds delicious.
I do like knowing, by the way, that Daniel's in my support group of being extremely confused every time I've been seeing Mom Donnie headlines and thinking people are writing about Mominy because it's so close. And so I was like, the New York Times picks this up? No, they didn't.
Yes, too close.
So, Mr. Barbecuologist, I want to know, where do I have to go here in DFW to try this amazing barbecue?
Well, one of the newer places that I've found recently is Tejas Brisket Company.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's just east of downtown off of Live Oak. I mean, they only serve breakfast and lunch. It's a tiny little place. It's really takeout only. There's a couple small tables in there, but it seems more for waiting on your order than actually dining in. I went for lunch one day and it was fine. Somebody encouraged me to go back for breakfast and it was amazing. The breakfast tacos, they do a smoked brisket breakfast taco. They make their own tortillas, their smoked sausage taco. They do a brisket biscuit. The biscuit is made with beef tallow, and then they scramble the chopped brisket and the eggs together nice and fluffy and put that between the biscuit with some cheese.
Yum.
They also make cinnamon rolls as a little side addition. Those are amazing too. And then I went back again for lunch, and I think they just needed some time to get used to the space. They've got a tiny little smoker out in the parking lot. They do a lot with that little little kitchen. They make all their own bread for the buns, and I ordered a chopped brisket sandwich, and it was just like perfect. Right. I mean, it was like there's something comforting about a chopped brisket sandwich, a little saucy, the pickles, the onions, buttered and griddled bread. And then they make their own buns, and the brisket itself was nice and smoky and good. And the barbecue sauce was sweet. And like all together, it was just this perfect little bite.
Wow, now I'm hungry.
That is great. We're all going to go try Tejas Brisket Company now because you said so. Thank you.
You can watch The State of BBQ by visiting pbs.org, and it's free. So we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're getting into your feedback on this year's Texas Michelin Guide.
Central Market is really into food. Like when we say cheese, it's in 12 languages into food. Butchers, bakers, and sushi roll makers into food. We're talking so obsessive about quality you could shop blindfolded into food. Central Market is really into food. If you are too, then let us turn your shopping list into a treasure map. Get inspired, get adventurous, or just get a chef-made dinner when you've got more taste buds than time. No place makes every meal more amazing like Central Market. Really into food. Shop now at centralmarket.com.
Welcome back. In just a minute, we're delving into your Michelin thoughts, but first we wanted to invite you to share our podcast with your friends and family. We'd love your help spreading the word about Eat, Drink, DFW and the news we share each week. So great news, Daniel did decide to stick around for this B block. Thank you for being here.
I'm still here.
He's not going anywhere. We need to start our Michelin conversation today with Imelda because she wasn't here and we want to hear your thoughts. What's going on?
Well, I almost died on vacation.
Imelda. Yes, so sorry.
It was really bad. So let me tell you, I was in Holbox. This is an island like 2 hours from Cancun. And I was getting out of the pool like a really cool girl, And then going down the stairs, boom, I fell back. And I cut my head open. And it was really bad because I lost consciousness for a couple of minutes. And I was all confused for 10 more minutes. And there was a lot of blood and everything. I mean, I have been very nervous about the outcome of this, and all your voices are like kids' voices. So it's really fun, Imelda, I don't know if it's related to, but I have to go to the doctor like right now.
Does your head hurt?
It was hurting, yeah, for some days, but I was on painkillers and it was okay.
Ugh, we're glad you're back. I'm so sorry.
I know, me too.
Well, while you were gone, Imelda, we wrote approximately 1 zillion stories.
I know.
About Michelin. I would say it would be blissful to have missed some of it because it was both dramatic and boring at the same time. What did you think about what happened at the ceremony a couple of weeks ago?
I'm very disappointed because Michelin did it again, guys. They left much of our Hispanic and Tex-Mex food out of the awards, and that is infuriating. It's very interesting also because we know those cuisines come from tradition, and family, and maybe our cuisines are not made for that mold. So there's 2 lessons here. One for restaurants, maybe, yeah, we have to innovate more. We have to be more bold with our cuisines and everything. But Michelin also has to learn how to evaluate our cuisines from another point of view. And we were talking about these barbecue things. I think it's really bad that we are not being recognized like this because they are leaving out a lot of our culture, in Texas. So if they want to be relevant in Texas, they have to start looking at our food, our daily food. That's what I think.
Well said.
What do you think, Daniel?
I think you're right. I mean, I think among the food snobbery of the world, that Tex-Mex is always looked down upon. And, without American cheese, it's just not the same. But when you have a French company who's evaluating it, I think it's a big lost opportunity. And I do think that they need to think a little bit more about what Texans eat every day.
I think especially since it's a travel-related award, it's just strange to me that you wouldn't point people towards places where they could go eat the food of a particular culture. And I guess I think about it because I've eaten at Michelin restaurants in Paris, and they do have some Italian food and like other things interspersed, but it's mainly French. And so it's interesting because I feel like they're very representative in some areas, and then I just don't think they get it here.
Yeah, I mean, they really leaned on barbecue that first year in a way I thought was a little too much. And then to Imelda's point, just whiffed on Tex-Mex and Mexican food. We got a lot of emails from readers who just have thoughts about how this year's Michelin ceremony shook out. One of those emails came from a guy who we've called the Michelin Man, and this is kind of Texas's Michelin Man. His name is Drew Stevenson, and within a couple of weeks of the Michelin ceremony in 2024, he went and visited all 15 one-star restaurants in Texas. We wrote about his journey and, some of his thoughts on which places were worth the time and the effort. That was all early in 2025 that we wrote those stories, and I encourage you to go back and read the story from our Michelin Man, Drew. Here are his thoughts on the 2025 ceremony, and I think there's some really smart moments in here. So first he says, loved the Michelin podcast, ! So good job, gals. Here are my thoughts on this year's Michelin Guide. He said, Dallas is definitely an underdog city when it comes to food. And I think as we grow together as diners, understanding how Michelin views our city's food, it really helps when voices like yours have fired up productive conversations about it. So a tiny pat on our back. Thank you, Drew. He offered a lot of insight into which Dallas restaurants he thinks are worthy. For time's sake, I'm going to bypass that and move into a frame of reference we haven't looked at yet that Drew points out. How Texas's star numbers compare to other parts of the United States. So here's Drew again. In Tampa Bay, year 2 went from 0 to 3 stars. Orlando stayed flat at 4. Miami went from 10 to 11. Denver went from 5 to 6. The big outlier was Atlanta, jumping from 5 to 9 in year 2. Looking at the long-term trends, Chicago actually has fewer starred restaurants today than it did when the guide debuted 15 years ago. And San Francisco, since its 2007 debut, has only gained 10 new starred restaurants in almost 20 years. For arguably the second best food city in America, that's not a massive increase. So with all that in mind, Dallas gaining 1 new star this year is a big deal. Huge, actually. My take is that they absolutely deserve a star, and honestly, even if they'd only been open half the time they have, they still would. He says, for reference, the record for fastest star is 20 days.
And what restaurant is that, Sarah?
Drew says it is called Behind in London. He says that Mominy chef Christophe DeLillis is, quote, arguably one of the 20 most talented chefs in the country. We are witnessing an all-time great in the making. He was mentored by the late, great Joël Robuchon, arguably the greatest chef of our time, whose restaurants even posthumously hold 32 stars. For comparison, America's greatest chef, Thomas Keller, holds 7. So, Drew asks, is Christophe the most talented chef in Dallas? Absolutely, he believes. Could he be the most talented chef in Texas? Very possibly. And if Michelin already knows his track record, should it really take more than 2 or 3 meals for inspectors to recognize a star? Probably not. So them's fighting words from him, but he says that Mominy is a superstar restaurant and that Michelin already knows what Christophe can do. He says, quote, it's not favoritism, it's recognizing that excellence tends to follow certain people.
I'm going back and forth in my head right now with the Joël Robuchon and Thomas Keller comparison because Thomas Keller has way fewer restaurants.
Sure.
Then I'm also, though, like, it's impressive in terms of how many restaurants that are in Joël Robuchon's name that they all performed as well as they have in the Michelin Awards.
Well, I mean, I think his input is certainly valuable if he's going out and doing, like, he's getting the firsthand opinion, right? He's going out and actually eating at these places. If he could have thrown in a trip to Seguin, Texas and tried burnt bean in the mix there to see how it might compare, I would have loved to hear his feedback there too.
Yeah, I wonder if Drew has been to Burnt Bean, because I know this because I've interviewed him a couple of times. His love is a Michelin-starred restaurant, and he and his wife travel the world eating at them. And when Michelin came to Texas, of course, he went to our 15 one-star restaurants. But I think in general, he loves this like high fine dining food. And that is such a specific diner. One of the reasons why we spent so much time reading Drew's point of view is because he's eaten at way more Michelin-starred restaurants than I have, for instance. And I think his comparisons are really interesting. And we haven't quite said on this podcast what he said just now.
Is he secretly a Michelin inspector? And this is just his cover? He's like, if I'm so public about it, no one will suspect.
No one will suspect me. Drew, if you're listening, call or email me or blink twice if you are actually a Michelin inspector.
We got an email from Carnell at eatdrink@dallasnews.com, and here's what he had to say. Thanks for all the insights on the 2025 Texas Michelin Guide. My friends, co-workers, and sometimes strangers like to debate about the quality of the food scene here in Dallas compared with other big cities. It could be easy to say that the rest of the country doesn't understand the Texas food scene, but I am also wondering if Dallas and the rest of Texas that's falling short. Or is there some other disconnect between our food scene and naysayers, including locals?
Carnell with the big questions. Is our food just not good enough?
Well, I mean, I did also just see two big announcements of big newspapers in Minneapolis and in Washington, D.C. announcing their new full-time food critics, which I know is something that Dallas has been missing for a really long time. And I think that's one of those things that I think would promote just more discourse about our dining.
Yeah, the trouble with the food critic, in my opinion, is it's one person's opinion. And in a world where everybody fancies themselves a critic on the internet, we've sort of learned to put some credence into the hive mind, right? Into the idea that maybe even if you aren't a huge fan of Yelp or Google reviews, that the aggregate ideas behind a bunch of people's thoughts might make more sense than one person's point of view. But I think a critic probably has a mind more similar to a Michelin inspector, for instance, than your everyday Yelp user.
Yeah, agreed.
My thing when I look at the Dallas food scene that I'd like to see more of are more locally founded concepts. We just have so much stuff that's brought in from the outside, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's really fun for me to go eat at a restaurant that maybe is from New York that I would eat at when I lived in New York. But I always come back to the fact that I'm not sure if Dallas knows what its own food identity is. I think that can actually be an asset for us because we're such a melting pot. We have so many people move here all the time from across not just the nation, but around the world. And I would just like to see more people who live here tell us what to eat by cooking those things for us.
Last question for you, Daniel. As you head out, how many miles do you put on your car every year?
Oh, man, so many, but I also fly a lot.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. I used to drive everywhere so that I could eat all the barbecue in between.
Yep.
But these days, driving between San Antonio and the Rio Grande Valley, like, there's not a whole lot of new barbecue. There's only so many barbecue joints in Kingsville. And so, yeah, there's not as much reason to do as much driving like around rural Texas, unless I have a spot that I specifically want to go try. So I did make a trip down to Flatonia to try Casey Lee's barbecue, which is a Saturday only, but really good barbecue joint, and got to Hallettsville, which I know is a little off subject here, but it just felt like such cool old school barbecue joints in Hallettsville, which I don't think maybe get enough love, and part of that's my fault. But Nova Sad's in Hallettsville and Kalachny Barbecue in Hallettsville. Head there on a Saturday, get the pork steaks, the pork ribs, the sausages, and yeah, you'll be happy.
Well, I think we're all going to Google Maps that right now, because one thing I did when your list came out earlier this year is I recognized there were quite a few small towns that me as a born and bred Texan thought I knew most of them. Nope. I find many new ones on your list every year.
Yeah. I mean, Port Lavaca, where Lavaca Barbecue is located. Yeah, it's not, it's like an hour and a half outside of Corpus Christi. Yeah.
And last question, will you eat barbecue today, Daniel?
I mean, if you're counting the pot of beans that I have on the stove back at home right now, they do have barbecue in them, because I do save my leftovers and use them in my beans. So yeah, I will be eating some barbecue today.
And that's all the time we have for today. And we don't want you to miss an episode. Make sure you're following Eat, Drink, DFW wherever you find podcasts. Special thanks to our producer, Julie Fisk. For the news, I'm Anna Butler. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Eat, Drink, DFW from the Dallas Morning News is made possible by Central Market.